My brother said, "You'll embarrass yourself at the year-end party because I insisted on bringing my emotional support chickens, Dolores and Fernando, to the rooftop venue, claiming I had legal documentation that they were service animals for my anxiety disorder." His face had gone purple, veins bulging at his temples as he stood blocking my apartment doorway 3 days before his precious corporate celebration. Behind him, his fiancée Vanessa crossed her arms, her designer dress already picked out for an event meant to showcase their perfect life to his colleagues at Harrington and Associates. "Rebecca, this is my career we're talking about," Trevor hissed, glancing back at Vanessa, who nodded vigorously. "You can't just show up with farm animals to a black tie event at the Meridian Hotel. What will the senior partners think?" He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks. "You've always been the weird one, but this is too far, even for you." I smiled sweetly and held up my phone, showing him the fabricated emotional support animal certificate I'd spent 2 hours designing that morning. "Actually, Trevor, it's completely legal. Discrimination against service animals is a federal offense. Would you like me to email this to your HR department?" The way his jaw clenched told me everything I needed to know. My dear brother had spent our entire childhood making sure everyone knew I was the unstable sister, the one who needed extra attention, the reason our parents' marriage fell apart according to his endless commentary at family dinners. He'd built his reputation at the firm on being the polished, put-together Whitmore, while painting me as the family embarrassment. What Trevor didn't know was that I'd been collecting evidence for 3 years, ever since I'd discovered he'd been embezzling from our grandmother's trust fund, the same grandmother who'd left us equal shares before her death. The chickens were just the opening act. The party was exactly as pretentious as I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and a string quartet playing near floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the downtown skyline. I arrived fashionably late in a stunning emerald gown, Dolores and Fernando in a custom carrier that cost more than Trevor's monthly car payment. The looks on people's faces as I walked through the crowd were priceless, but nothing compared to Trevor's expression when he saw me heading straight for the senior partner's table. "Rebecca, what are you doing?" He materialized at my elbow, smile frozen in place, one hand shooting out to grab my wrist. "We need to talk. Now." I shook him off and continued walking. "I'm just introducing myself to Mr. Harrington. You've told me so much about him." Dolores chose that moment to let out a magnificent cluck that echoed through the suddenly quiet room. Several people laughed nervously. Trevor's face had gone from purple to ash white. "Ms. Whitmore," Gerald Harrington stood, extending his hand with genuine warmth. "Trevor's mentioned you, though I had no idea you'd be joining us this evening, and with such unique companions." His eyes twinkled with amusement rather than judgment, which clearly wasn't what Trevor had been hoping for. "Oh, Trevor probably told you I have anxiety issues," I said brightly, noticing how my brother flinched at the word issues. "He's always been so concerned about my mental health. In fact, he's been managing my portion of our grandmother's estate because he convinced our family I wasn't capable of handling finances myself." I paused, letting that sink in. These are my emotional support chickens. They help me cope with the stress of discovering where my inheritance money has actually been going. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Mr. Harrington's smile didn't waver, but his eyes sharpened. "Managing your inheritance? Trevor, I wasn't aware you had power of attorney over family assets. That's quite a responsibility." Trevor's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Vanessa had gone pale, her champagne glass frozen halfway to her lips. "It's not like that, sir. Rebecca, you're confused." "Am I?" I pulled a manila envelope from my clutch, setting it on the table between the shrimp cocktails and caviar. "Because I have bank statements here showing regular transfers from the Whitmore Family Trust into an account under your name. $47,000 over the past 18 months. I turned to Mr. Harrington. "Did you know your employee has been using embezzled funds to pay for his downtown condo? The same condo he claimed he could afford on his analyst salary?" The envelope sat there like a bomb, and I could see Trevor calculating whether to deny, deflect, or run. He chose poorly. "You can't prove anything. Those transfers were legitimate. I was managing investments." "Investments in your lifestyle?" I opened the envelope, spreading papers across the white tablecloth. "Here's the lease agreement for your condo, signed 3 months after the first transfer. Here's the receipt for Vanessa's engagement ring, purchased with a wire transfer from the trust account. Here's—" "Enough!" Mr. Harrington's voice cut through Trevor's sputtering protests. "Mr. Whitmore, I think we need to have a conversation in my office. Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp." He looked at me with something close to respect. "Ms. Whitmore, I apologize that you had to bring this to light in such a public manner, though I must say, your emotional support chickens seem to have done their job admirably. Trevor grabbed my arm again, harder this time, his mask of civility completely shattered. You vindictive bitch. Do you have any idea what you've just done? I'll lose everything. Yes, I said simply, pulling my arm free. That's exactly the point. The security guard escorted Trevor from the rooftop within minutes. Vanessa followed, her heels clicking frantically against the marble as she tried to keep up, already on her phone presumably calling her father's lawyer. The party continued around us, but the atmosphere had fundamentally shifted. People who'd been laughing at my chickens were now whispering behind champagne flutes, recalculating everything they thought they knew about the Whitmore siblings. Mr. Harrington invited me to sit at the partners' table. I fed Dolores and Fernando organic grain from a small bag in my purse while explaining how I'd first noticed the discrepancies. Our grandmother left us each $200,000. Trevor convinced our parents I was too emotionally fragile to manage it responsibly. He had them sign documents giving him control. I met Mr. Harrington's eyes. I have degrees in accounting and forensic analysis from Cornell. I've been working at Chen & Associates for 4 years now, specializing in financial fraud investigation. A woman in a silver dress leaned forward. Margaret Chen, according to her name tag, one of the senior partners. So, the chickens, the anxiety disorder documentation. Pure theater, I confirmed. I needed Trevor overconfident, convinced I was still the helpless little sister. I needed him to react exactly as he did tonight, in front of witnesses who matter. I pulled out my phone, showing them the recording I'd been making since entering the venue. I also needed him to physically grab me twice while threatening me, both captured on video with clear audio. Mr. Harrington whistled low. You set this entire thing up. He stole from me for 3 years. He used my mental health, which I worked hard to manage after our parents' divorce, as a weapon to isolate me from family financial decisions. He told our cousins I was unstable, our aunts that I needed supervision, our parents that I'd squander the money on therapy birds. I stroked Fernando's feathers. That last part gave me the idea, actually. I figured if he'd already written the narrative, I might as well perform it. Margaret laughed, sharp and approving. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Though I have to ask, are those actually chickens or just props? Oh, they're real. I've been raising them for 6 months. Trevor didn't know because we haven't spoken outside of mandatory family events since I started investigating him. The documentation is fake, obviously, but the chickens are genuine emotional support. They don't judge, they're excellent listeners, and they lay eggs. I paused. Unlike my brother, they actually contribute something valuable. The partners exchanged glances. Mr. Harrington cleared his throat. Ms. Whitmore, your brother has been with our firm for 5 years. We've trusted him with increasingly sensitive client accounts. If what you're showing us is accurate, and I have no reason to doubt it, then we have a serious problem. Clients whose finances he's managed need to be audited immediately. My smile widened. I took the liberty of doing preliminary reviews. I have flash drives in my car with complete analysis of every account Trevor has touched in the past 18 months. Some show concerning patterns similar to what he did with our family trust. Small transfers, carefully timed, always just under reporting thresholds. I let that information settle. I wasn't sure if I should bring them to you or directly to the State Banking Commission. I decided to let tonight's events guide my choice. Bring them to us, Margaret said immediately. Monday morning. We'll need to move quickly before he can cover his tracks further. He can't, I said. I've already reported the trust fund embezzlement to our family's attorney. Documents were filed with the county courthouse this afternoon. Trevor will be served with papers tomorrow morning. By the time he walks into your office Monday, he'll already be facing civil charges, possibly criminal, depending on what the DA's office decides. Mr. Harrington sat back in his chair, studying me with newfound appreciation. You've been planning this for months. 3 years, I corrected, since the day I accessed the trust account online and saw the first unauthorized transfer. I could have confronted him immediately, but I wanted to understand the full scope. I wanted to know if this was a one-time mistake or a pattern. Turns out, it's very much a pattern. I fed Dolores another handful of grain. Trevor has always been good at making himself look better by making me look worse. I decided to let him think his strategy was working while I built a case that would destroy him completely. Someone's phone buzzed, then another. Within seconds, half the room was checking messages. I knew what they were seeing because I'd timed it perfectly. The email I'd scheduled to send at 9 p.m., blind copied to every employee at Harrington & Associates, containing a detailed but professionally written summary of Trevor's embezzlement. my investigation, and a note that senior partners were being notified tonight for immediate action. Did you just, Margaret started, send company-wide notification? Yes. I wanted to make sure the information came from me first, with full documentation attached, before Trevor could spin his version on Monday. Everyone in this firm now knows exactly what kind of person they've been working alongside. I stood, gathering Dolores and Fernando. I've taken enough of your evening. The flash drives are in a locked case in my trunk. I'll bring them by Monday at 7 a.m. before Trevor's scheduled meeting, so you have time to review. Mr. Harrington stood as well. Ms. Whitmore, I don't know whether to be impressed or terrified. You've systematically destroyed your brother's career, reputation, and financial future in one evening, using chickens as props. Emotional support chickens, I corrected with a smile, and he destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone could see it clearly. I headed toward the exit, then paused. Oh! One more thing. Vanessa's father is Richard Caldwell, the real estate developer. They've been planning to invest in Harrington and Associates' new commercial property fund. You might want to prepare for that deal to fall through. Vanessa tends to side with whoever signs the checks, and Trevor won't be signing anything but legal documents for quite a while. The elevator doors closed on their stunned faces. Dolores clucked contentedly in her carrier. Fernando had fallen asleep. I pulled out my phone and checked my messages. 3 texts from my mother demanding to know what I'd done. 2 from cousins asking if the rumors were true, and 1 from our family attorney confirming the legal documents had been filed, and Trevor would be served at 8 a.m. tomorrow at his condo. Perfect timing. He'd wake up to a process server, realize his career was over, and spend the weekend knowing that Monday would only bring worse news. No time to prepare, no opportunity to craft excuses, no way to charm his way out of what was coming. The lobby was quiet as I walked through it. The doorman, who'd given me skeptical looks when I arrived with the chicken carrier, now held the door open with a respectful nod. Word traveled fast, apparently. My car was waiting in the garage, and I loaded Dolores and Fernando into their secure travel crate in the back seat before retrieving the locked case containing the flash drives. I'd made copies of everything, naturally. 1 set for the firm, 1 set for my attorney, 1 set in a safe deposit box, and 1 set uploaded to encrypted cloud storage with instructions to release publicly if anything happened to me. Trevor had taught me young that you couldn't trust family to protect you. I'd learned the lesson well, then applied it with precision he never anticipated. My phone rang. Trevor. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, and again. By the 5th call, I answered. You're going to regret this. His voice was ragged, angry, desperate. I'll tell everyone the truth about you, about the medication, the hospital stays after the divorce, the suicide attempt. Go ahead, I said calmly. I've been open about my mental health journey for 2 years now. I write about it on my blog, which has 50,000 followers. I speak at colleges about managing anxiety and depression. Your attempts to weaponize my lowest moments will just make you look more pathetic. I paused. Unlike embezzlement, Trevor, mental illness isn't a crime. And unlike you, I got help instead of stealing from family. He was breathing hard. I needed that money. The condo, the lifestyle, it's all about image in this business. Then you should have earned it honestly. I ended the call and blocked his number. Then I blocked Vanessa's number. Then I blocked my mother's number because I knew she'd be calling soon to plead Trevor's case, to ask me to reconsider, to remind me that family forgives family. But Trevor had never treated me like family. He'd treated me like a resource to exploit and a reputation to damage for his own benefit. He'd used my pain as his punchline for years. He'd stolen money meant to honor our grandmother's memory and used it to buy jewelry for his fiancée. I drove home to my modest apartment, carried my chickens inside, and poured myself a glass of wine. Tomorrow, Trevor's perfect life would finish crumbling. Monday, the firm would discover the full extent of his betrayal. Within a week, criminal charges would likely follow, and I would sleep better than I had in 3 years. The weekend passed in a blur of blocked calls and ignored emails. I spent Saturday morning at the farmer's market with Dolores and Fernando, who'd become minor celebrities in my neighborhood. People actually asked to take photos with them now, which was both hilarious and oddly validating. By Saturday afternoon, my social media had exploded. Someone from the party had leaked the story, and suddenly I was getting interview requests from local news stations and calls from journalists wanting the full story. I declined them all. The court documents were public record. The firm would make their own statement. I didn't need to provide commentary when the evidence spoke volumes. Sunday morning, my father finally got through. I'd forgotten to block his number, or perhaps some part of me wanted to hear what he'd say. Rebecca. His voice was tired. Your mother showed me the legal documents. I need you to explain. I found out Trevor was stealing from my inheritance 3 years ago. I investigated thoroughly. I gathered evidence. I reported it to the appropriate authorities and to his employer. That's the explanation. He's your brother. He's a thief who used my mental health history to manipulate our family into giving him control of my money. Which part of that suggests I owe him loyalty? I was feeding the chickens, watching them peck at their organic grain blend. They were so simple in their needs, so honest in their behavior. Dad, he told people I was too unstable to function. He convinced you and Mom to sign over financial control. He cashed in on making me look incompetent. My father was quiet for a long moment. Your mother wants you to drop the charges. She thinks this has gone too far. Of course she does. Trevor has always been her favorite. The golden child who could do no wrong. I sat down on my apartment balcony, looking out over the city. Did you know I almost didn't make it through college? Not because of academics, but because every time I came home for holidays, Trevor would tell elaborate stories about my supposed breakdowns to anyone who'd listen. I'd return to campus and find out classmates had heard I'd been hospitalized, that I was dangerous, that I was one bad day from a complete collapse. Rebecca, none of it was true, Dad. But perception became reality. People treated me differently. Professors questioned whether I could handle the workload. Potential employers Googled my name and found Trevor's comments on family social media about his troubled sister. I had to work 3 times as hard to prove I was capable, and even then people doubted me. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't ask. Neither did Mom. You just accepted Trevor's version because it was easier than confronting the possibility that your perfect son was systematically destroying his sister's reputation for fun. I watched Fernando chase a moth across the balcony. When I graduated magna cum laude, Trevor told people at my graduation party that I'd probably cheated. When I got my job at Chen & Associates, he said I'd slept with someone to get hired. When I bought this apartment, he suggested I was involved in something illegal because there was no way I could afford it on my salary. My father's breathing had changed. Why didn't you tell us? I tried. Mom said I was being oversensitive. You said siblings fight and I should let it go. Trevor was charming and successful, and made you look good at family events. I was the complicated one with the mental health issues who made things awkward. I finished my coffee. So I stopped trying to defend myself and started collecting evidence instead, which, as it turns out, was the right decision. Your mother is devastated. Trevor stole almost $50,000 from me, Dad. Money Grandma left specifically for both of us. Money she saved her entire life working as a teacher. He didn't need it for medical bills or emergencies. He needed it for a luxury condo and a 3-carat diamond ring. My voice hardened. If Mom is devastated, she should direct those feelings at the son who's actually a criminal, not the daughter who reported the crime. We hung up shortly after. I knew my mother wouldn't speak to me for months, maybe years. She'd paint me as vindictive and cruel, the daughter who destroyed her brother over money. Family members would take sides, cousins would whisper at weddings, aunts would give me disappointed looks at funerals. I'd accepted all of that before I ever filed the first document. Monday morning arrived with autumn rain. I dressed in my sharpest suit, the navy one I saved for court appearances when testifying as an expert witness in fraud cases. Dolores and Fernando stayed home with an automated feeder and a puzzle toy I'd bought them. They'd served their purpose. This phase didn't require props. I arrived at Harrington & Associates at 6:45 a.m. Mr. Harrington and Margaret Chen were already there, along with 2 other senior partners and the firm's head of legal compliance. I handed over the locked case containing the flash drives. "This is everything?" Margaret asked, turning one of the drives over in her hand. Client account analyses, transaction patterns, email communications I was able to access through Trevor's personal laptop that he left open at a family dinner 8 months ago, and comparative data showing similar embezzlement patterns across multiple accounts. I opened my tablet, pulling up a summary document. The highlighted accounts in red need immediate auditing. Yellow are suspicious but less urgent. Green appear clean but should still be reviewed for thoroughness. The legal compliance officer, a stern woman named Patricia Vaughn, studied the tablet screen. "How did you access confidential client information?" "I didn't. I analyzed publicly available transaction data, cross-referenced with information Trevor voluntarily shared in personal emails and text messages, and applied standard forensic accounting algorithms to identify anomalies." I met her gaze steadily. Everything I gathered was either public record, voluntarily disclosed by Trevor himself, or obtained through legal means. My family's trust account gave me legitimate access to monitor my own inheritance, which is how I first identified his methods. Mr. Harrington plugged one of the flash drives into his laptop. The room fell silent except for the clicking of his mouse as he navigated through folders. His expression grew darker with each passing minute. Jesus Christ, he muttered finally. Whitmore has been skimming from the Henderson account for 14 months. Small amounts, always under 10,000, always timed with legitimate large transactions so they'd look like processing fees or administrative costs. Margaret leaned over his shoulder. The Henderson account is worth $42 million. They'd never notice a few thousand here and there. Exactly his calculation, I confirmed. He did the same thing with the Morrison Trust and the Blackwell Estate Fund. The amounts are individually small enough to avoid triggering automatic fraud detection, but collectively, we're looking at approximately $230,000 across 7 client accounts over a 3-year period. Patricia's face had gone pale. If this gets out, the firm's reputation will take a hit regardless, I interrupted. But you can control the narrative. You discovered the fraud through internal auditing, took immediate action, terminated the employee, and are cooperating fully with authorities. You're victims of Trevor's deception, same as the clients. I paused. Or you can try to cover it up, in which case I'll take everything to the State Banking Commission and let them investigate publicly while your clients read about it in the newspaper. Mr. Harrington closed his laptop. Trevor's meeting is scheduled for 8. Patricia, I want criminal counsel here by 7:30. Margaret, contact every affected client personally before end of business today. We're going to make this right. What about Rebecca's compensation? Margaret asked. She did work that would have cost us hundreds of thousands in forensic accounting fees. I shook my head. I want a written statement from the firm confirming Trevor's embezzlement and that I was the one who discovered and reported it. I want that statement provided to every family member who's been told I'm unstable or vindictive. I want my grandmother's name cleared of any suggestion that she was wrong to leave me inheritance money. I stood, gathering my tablet. The money Trevor stole from me, I'll recover through the courts. What I need from you is the truth, documented and undeniable. Trevor arrived at 8:15. Probably thinking the extra 15 minutes would make him look busy and important, rather than desperate and stalling. I watched from Margaret's office as he stepped off the elevator, suit wrinkled, tie askew, the overconfident stride he usually carried completely absent. He looked like he'd aged 5 years over the weekend. Vanessa wasn't with him. According to my cousin's text from yesterday, she'd moved back to her father's estate and was already consulting divorce attorneys. The 3-carat ring was apparently being returned to the jeweler, though whether she'd get a refund on something purchased with stolen money was questionable. Mr. Harrington intercepted Trevor before he could reach his desk. Their conversation was brief, tense, and ended with Trevor being escorted to the main conference room. Through the glass walls, I watched his face cycle through emotions: confusion, anger, fear, and finally a desperate attempt at charm as he realized the severity of the situation. The firm's criminal attorney arrived and the conference room door closed. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I didn't need to. I'd provided enough evidence that Trevor's options ranged from bad to catastrophic. He could admit guilt and cooperate, hoping for leniency. He could deny everything and face the full weight of evidence in court, or he could try to deflect blame, which would only make everything worse. My phone buzzed. A text from the family attorney: civil suit filed successfully. Criminal DA reviewing evidence for charges. Expect arraignment within 2 weeks. Another text, this one from my cousin Jennifer. Your mom called everyone trying to organize an intervention. Dad told her to leave you alone. Half the family is on your side now. The other half is delusional. I smiled. The truth was doing exactly what I'd designed it to do, forcing people to confront reality instead of accepting Trevor's carefully crafted lies. Margaret appeared in the doorway. He's asking to speak with you. Absolutely not. That's what I told him. But he's claiming you fabricated evidence, that you have a grudge from childhood, that your mental health history proves you're unstable and vindictive. She leaned against the doorframe. He's not taking this well. He's not supposed to take it well. He's supposed to confess, accept consequences, and spend the next decade rebuilding a life he destroyed through his own greed and cruelty. I closed my tablet. Is he going to confess? The attorney is strongly recommending it. We've shown him enough evidence that denial is pointless. The question now is whether he cooperates with client restitution or forces everyone through lengthy court proceedings. 2 hours later, Trevor emerged from the conference room looking like a ghost. His confession had been recorded, witnessed, and signed. The firm was already contacting clients to arrange full restitution meetings. Trevor's employment was terminated effective immediately, his access to all systems revoked, his personal items being packed by security while he sat in that conference room facing the consequences of his choices. I waited in the lobby as he was escorted out. He saw me standing there and something in him snapped. He lunged forward, security barely catching him before he could reach me. "You destroyed my life!" he screamed. "Everything I worked for, everything I built, gone because you couldn't let go of ancient history!" I stepped closer just outside his reach and spoke quietly enough that only he and the security guards could hear. "You destroyed your own life, Trevor. You stole from me, from clients, from everyone who trusted you. You used my pain as entertainment and my illness as a weapon. You made me into a villain in every family story to make yourself look heroic." I paused, making sure he was looking directly at me. "I didn't destroy you. I just made sure everyone could see who you really are. I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother the first time you told someone I was too crazy to function. You stopped being family when you stole money meant to honor Grandma's memory. You're just a criminal who happens to share my DNA." I turned to security. "Get him out of here." They dragged him toward the exit. His screaming echoed through the marble lobby, incoherent rage and desperate accusations blending together into white noise. Other employees watched from balconies and doorways, phones out, recording everything. Trevor's final moments at Harrington and Associates would be preserved forever, shared across social media. Impossible to deny or rewrite. The glass doors closed behind him and the lobby fell silent. Mr. Harrington approached, hands in his pockets. Well, that was dramatic. He's always had a flair for spectacle, usually at someone else's expense. "The clients are being notified today. Full restitution from company reserves while we pursue recovery from Trevor's assets. His condo will be seized and sold along with his car, jewelry, anything of value." He paused. The DA called. "Criminal charges are being filed Thursday. Grand larceny, wire fraud, embezzlement. He's looking at 5 to 15 years if convicted. He'll be convicted. The evidence is overwhelming." "Your evidence is overwhelming," Margaret corrected, joining us. The DA said he's never seen a more thoroughly documented case brought by a private citizen. Usually they have to build cases from scratch. You handed them everything wrapped in a bow. I'm a forensic accountant. Thorough documentation is literally my job. I checked my watch. I need to get to my actual office. I've taken enough vacation days for this drama. "Rebecca," Mr. Harrington said as I turned to leave. "We meant what we said about compensation. You did work for us that saved our reputation. Let us at least cover your legal fees." I considered it. "Donate an equivalent amount to the National Alliance on Mental Illness in my grandmother's name. Include a note that it's from the Whitmore family, given in recognition of the importance of supporting those struggling with mental health challenges." I smiled. Trevor's crimes can fund something actually helpful instead of just his lifestyle. They agreed, and I left Harrington and Associates knowing I'd never need to return. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city looked washed clean, autumn leaves bright against wet concrete. My phone buzzed with messages, alerts, notifications, but I ignored all of it. I'd done what I set out to do. Trevor was exposed, charged, and facing consequences that would follow him for the rest of his life. The rest was just aftermath. The arraignment happened on a Thursday morning. I sat in the back of the courtroom, dressed professionally, but unremarkably, just another face in the gallery. Trevor stood before the judge in an ill-fitting suit he'd clearly borrowed, his usual designer wardrobe already seized as proceeds of crime. His public defender looked fresh out of law school and utterly overwhelmed. The charges were read. 7 counts of embezzlement, 3 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of identity theft for accessing client accounts without authorization, 1 count of grand larceny for the theft from our family trust. The numbers were staggering when listed all together. Over $280,000 stolen across multiple victims over 3 years. Trevor pled not guilty. His attorney requested bail, citing his ties to the community and lack of flight risk. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Diana Reeves, presented evidence of Trevor's deteriorating financial situation, his broken engagement, his terminated employment, and his complete lack of legitimate income or assets. "Your Honor, Mr. Whitmore has lost everything that kept him anchored here. His fiancée has left him. His family has largely disowned him. He has no job prospects and substantial debt. He has every motivation to flee and no reason to stay." She placed a folder on the judge's bench. Additionally, Mr. Whitmore has made threatening statements toward his sister, who was instrumental in exposing his crimes. We consider him a potential danger. The judge set bail at $500,000. Trevor's face went white. He couldn't make that even with a bail bondsman. He'd be staying in county jail until trial. As they led him away in handcuffs, he searched the courtroom and found me. Our eyes met across the space and I saw it. the moment he truly understood that I'd won. That everything he'd built on my diminishment had crumbled completely while I sat here free, employed, vindicated, and utterly unbothered by his suffering. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. The trial took 3 months to reach the docket. I testified for 4 hours, walking the jury through my investigation timeline, explaining forensic accounting techniques in language they could understand, showing them exactly how Trevor had structured his thefts to avoid detection. The prosecutor projected my meticulously organized spreadsheets and documentation onto screens where everyone could see the patterns. Trevor's defense tried to paint me as vindictive, obsessed, someone with a grudge using my professional skills to frame an innocent man. They brought up my mental health history, the medication I'd taken as a teenager, the brief hospitalization after my parents' divorce. I'd prepared for this. Yes, I was hospitalized for 3 days when I was 17, I confirmed calmly. I was suicidal after my parents' divorce because I blamed myself for their problems. My brother used that low point in my life to tell people I was permanently unstable. He weaponized my illness to control family narratives about me for over a decade. I looked directly at the jury. Having depression doesn't make me dishonest. It makes me someone who understands what it's like to be vulnerable, which is why I take financial crimes so seriously. Trevor stole from people who trusted him, including his own sister. That's not fabrication. That's documented fact. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They returned guilty verdicts on all counts. Sentencing happened 2 weeks later. The judge gave Trevor 12 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole after 8. Full restitution was ordered to all victims, though everyone knew Trevor would never be able to pay back even a fraction of what he'd stolen. His professional licenses were permanently revoked. His credit was destroyed. His name was now publicly associated with fraud and betrayal. My mother attended sentencing. She sat on Trevor's side of the courtroom, crying quietly as the judge delivered the sentence. She didn't look at me once. My father sat separately, in the middle section, his face unreadable. He'd refused to take sides publicly, but he'd also stopped defending Trevor's actions after seeing the evidence. After sentencing, my father approached me in the courthouse hallway. "Your mother wants to know if you're satisfied now. Tell her I'm satisfied that justice was served. Trevor committed crimes and is facing appropriate consequences. Whether that satisfies me personally isn't relevant." I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. "Is she planning to visit him in prison?" "Every week, apparently. She's already planning appeals, convinced there was some mistake." There wasn't. Trevor stole money, got caught, and was convicted by a jury of his peers based on overwhelming evidence. Mom can waste her time on appeals if she wants, but the evidence doesn't change. I paused. "Will you be visiting him?" My father looked at the floor. "I don't know. Part of me feels like I should. Like that's what fathers do. But another part of me is just tired. Tired of making excuses. Tired of pretending I didn't see what he was becoming." He met my eyes. "I owe you an apology, Rebecca, for years of not listening. For letting him paint you as the problem while he was the one causing harm." "Okay. Just okay?" "What do you want me to say, Dad? That I forgive everything? That we can pretend the past didn't happen?" I shook my head. "You chose to believe Trevor's lies instead of supporting me when I needed it. That's a choice you made repeatedly. I'm glad you're acknowledging it now, but an acknowledgement isn't the same as repair." "What would repair look like?" I considered the question. "Start by telling Mom the truth every time she tries to rewrite history. Stop letting her paint me as vindictive for reporting crimes. Make it clear to extended family that Trevor is in prison because of his own actions, not because I'm cruel." I started walking toward the exit. "And maybe, occasionally, ask yourself if there were other times you let Trevor hurt people, because it was easier than confronting him." He didn't follow me. I didn't expect him to. Outside the courthouse, journalists waited with cameras and questions. I'd become a minor media sensation, the sister who took down her golden boy brother with chickens and spreadsheets. I ignored them all and walked to my car. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Vanessa. She'd tried contacting me several times since the trial started, wanting to meet, to explain, to somehow salvage her own reputation by distancing herself from Trevor's crimes. I'd ignored every attempt. She'd known what Trevor was doing to me, had laughed along with his cruel jokes, had benefited from the stolen money that bought her engagement ring. She deserved exactly the reputation she'd earned. I drove home to my apartment where Dolores and Fernando were waiting. I'd turned down interview requests, book deals, speaking engagements, My story wasn't inspirational entertainment. It was simply what happened when someone finally stopped accepting abuse and started documenting crimes. Chen and Associates had given me a promotion, senior forensic analyst with a specialty in family financial fraud. Apparently, my case had attracted attention from clients who suspected similar situations in their own families. I was booked solid for 6 months with consultations. The inheritance money would eventually be recovered, minus legal fees. Trevor's condo had sold at auction and those proceeds were being distributed among victims. It wouldn't make anyone whole, but it was something. I poured a glass of wine and sat on my balcony as sunset painted the city orange and gold. Dolores settled on my lap, making contented chicken noises. Fernando pecked at his reflection in the sliding glass door. 12 years. Trevor would be 43 when he got out, if he made parole. His career was over. His reputation was permanently destroyed. His relationships were obliterated. He'd lost everything he valued in exchange for money he'd already spent on a lifestyle that no longer existed. And I was here, in my apartment I'd bought with honestly earned money, with my chickens and my career and my vindication. The sunset was beautiful. 2 years later, I received a letter from Trevor. The prison envelope was unmistakable. His handwriting cramped and uneven compared to the confident scrawl I remembered. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity won. Dear Rebecca, I've had a lot of time to think about what I did and why. The prison counselor says I should take accountability. I'm writing to say I'm sorry for stealing from you. I'm sorry for the things I said about your mental health. I was wrong. I hope someday you can forgive me. I hope we can rebuild our relationship when I get out. You're still my sister. Trevor. I read it twice, then fed it through my paper shredder. He didn't understand even now. This wasn't about forgiveness or reconciliation or rebuilding anything. This was about consequences and accountability, and the permanent severing of a relationship that had been toxic since childhood. Trevor's apology was self-serving, mandated by some prison rehabilitation program designed to make him feel better about himself. I didn't respond. I wouldn't respond to future letters either. Trevor had 12 years to sit with what he'd done. I had my entire life to live without his presence in it. My mother never spoke to me again. She sent cards on holidays addressed only to me. No personal message, just her signature. Family gatherings became easier when I stopped attending them. Cousins who wanted relationships with me made individual efforts. The ones who believed Trevor's version of events simply faded from my life. My father tried, sporadically. Awkward coffee meetings where he asked surface-level questions about my work and avoided anything deeper. We had a relationship, technically, but it was hollow. Some damages were too extensive to repair. Vanessa married a different corporate executive 18 months after Trevor's conviction. I saw the announcement in the society pages. She'd changed her Instagram bio to remove any mention of Trevor, scrubbed her social media of photos with him, and apparently told people she'd narrowly escaped a terrible mistake. She was performing the role of someone who'd been deceived rather than someone who'd been complicit. I didn't care enough to correct the narrative. She was irrelevant. Chen and Associates continued throwing high-profile cases my way. I'd become known as someone who could untangle even the most complex family financial crimes. My client list included everyone from suspicious spouses to concerned business partners to adult children who suspected elderly parents were being exploited. I was expensive, thorough, and had a perfect track record of either finding evidence or definitively clearing suspects. Dolores and Fernando lived like pampered royalty, with a custom coupe on my apartment balcony and a social media following that sponsored their organic feed. I'd started a blog about forensic accounting, using my chickens as a metaphor for pecking through lies to find truth. It was ridiculous and successful in equal measure. On the 3rd anniversary of Trevor's sentencing, I received notification that he was up for a parole hearing. The parole board wanted victim impact statements. I wrote 1 page. Trevor Whitmore stole from me for 3 years while systematically destroying my reputation. His crimes extended beyond theft to emotional and psychological abuse that began in childhood and continued into adulthood. He has shown no genuine remorse, only self-pity about consequences. He is exactly where he should be, serving the sentence he earned through his own choices. I do not support early release. He was denied parole. They cited lack of genuine rehabilitation and outstanding restitution obligations. He'd have to serve at least 5 more years before another hearing. I celebrated by taking myself to dinner at an expensive restaurant and ordering champagne. Dolores and Fernando got organic blueberries as treats. It was a good day. My career flourished. I published a book on recognizing and documenting financial abuse, which became required reading in several forensic accounting programs. I gave lectures at conferences, trained law enforcement on family fraud patterns, and consulted on legislation about financial elder abuse. Trevor's name occasionally came up in my work as a case study, An example of how family trust creates opportunity for exploitation. I spoke about it clinically, without emotion, the way I'd speak about any criminal case. Some people found that cold. I found it freeing. 5 years after his conviction, my grandmother's estate was finally fully settled. Trevor's portion had been liquidated to pay restitution. My portion, now including interest from the recovery process, came to $247,000. I donated half to mental health organizations in my grandmother's name, invested a quarter in mutual funds, and used the remainder to buy a small house with enough land for a proper chicken coop. Dolores and Fernando were joined by 6 more chickens. I named them after forensic accounting terms: audit, ledger, debit, credit, balance, and reconcile. My neighbors thought I was eccentric. I didn't care. My mother sent a letter to my old apartment that was forwarded to my new address. She'd heard about the house and wanted to know if she could visit. She missed me. She hoped enough time had passed that we could move forward. Trevor was struggling in prison and could use family support. I didn't respond to that letter either. Some people thought I was harsh, unforgiving, cold-hearted. They said family was supposed to forgive, that holding grudges was toxic, that I was letting Trevor's actions control my life by refusing reconciliation. Those people didn't understand that forgiveness wasn't mandatory and reconciliation wasn't healing. They didn't understand that some relationships were healthier ended. They didn't understand that I'd spent years being controlled by Trevor's actions, and that cutting him out completely was the first truly free choice I'd made. 8 years after his conviction, Trevor was released on parole. I found out through a cousin's text message. He was required to live in a halfway house, work a supervised job, and attend weekly meetings with his parole officer. His professional licenses were still revoked. His credit was still destroyed. He was 45 years old with a felony record and no real prospects. He tried to contact me through my business website. The message was blocked by filters I'd set up years earlier. He tried through social media. Blocked. He tried through family members. They knew better than to pass along messages by now. 6 months after his release, I saw him at a grocery store. He was working as a bagger, wearing a name tag and a defeated expression. He was thinner, grayer, older than his years. He looked up as I approached his register and our eyes met. I watched recognition and shame flood his face. His hands shook as he bagged my groceries. The cashier noticed the tension and worked faster, trying to get me through the line quickly. "Rebecca," Trevor said quietly as I was about to leave. "Can we talk?" "5 minutes, please." "No, I just want to apologize. You apologized in a letter from prison. I read it. I shredded it. We have nothing to discuss." I picked up my groceries. The fact that I'm here buying food in peace while you're bagging groceries to pay back stolen money is exactly how this was always going to end. You made choices. These are consequences. I've paid my debt to society. You served 8 years of a 12-year sentence. You still owe restitution you'll never fully repay. You destroyed multiple lives, including your own. Your debt is nowhere near settled. I turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Trevor, I don't think about you anymore. You're not my villain or my cautionary tale or my unfinished business. You're just someone who used to be relevant who isn't anymore. I left him standing there in his grocery store uniform, surrounded by strangers who didn't know he used to be somebody important, and I felt absolutely nothing. That evening, sitting on my porch with my chickens pecking around my feet and my forensic accounting textbook open on my lap, I realized I'd won more completely than I'd ever planned. I hadn't just exposed Trevor's crimes or gotten justice through the legal system. I'd moved on. He was still defined by what he'd done, still paying for it, still trapped in the consequences. But I was building new memories, new relationships, new successes that had nothing to do with him. My reputation was my own. My career was flourishing. My life was exactly what I'd designed it to be. Trevor would spend the rest of his life looking back at what he'd lost. I was too busy looking forward at what I was building. The chickens clucked contentedly. The sunset painted my new yard in shades of gold. My phone buzzed with a notification about a new client case, someone who suspected embezzlement by a business partner. I was booked solid for another 6 months. My book was being translated into 4 languages. A documentary crew wanted to follow me for a project about women in forensic accounting. Life was good. And somewhere across town, Trevor was probably lying awake in his halfway house, thinking about everything he'd thrown away. I slept perfectly.